Hi, we are Ava, and Audrey, and today we are presenting on inflammation. Factors that can trigger an inflammatory response. So, inflammation is a biological immune response that is initiated by pathogens. So, these are going to be damaged cells, toxins, and what could lead to tissue damage. Both are infectious and non-infectious agents that activate inflammatory cells and pathways. The key triggers to these pathways include microbes, P- PRRs, PAMPSs, and MAMPS, cytokines, and then tissue damage.
Microbes. Microbes are living things that are too small to see without a microscope. Examples of microbes. This includes bacteria, archaea, fungi, protists, viruses, and protozoas. What do microbes do? There are thousands of microbes that live in our bodies every day. There are good microbes and bad ones. They can make us ill. The good microbes can help us digest our food, protect us against infections, and even help keep our reproductive health good. Having microbes help with our digestion that can affect the storage of the energy we receive from digestions in our food, from our food. Bad microbes can include things like viruses where they take over our healthy cells and eventually multiply them. PRP roles. PRP stands for platelet-rich plasma, blood that contains more platelets. What is the role of PRP? To create an injection that is concentrated on improvement of one's health. The idea behind this is that they can take hormones and bioproteins from one plasmid at a concentrated rate and inject it in one targeted area to release pain and increase healing time. There's two parts of PRP, and that includes plasma and liquid portion of blood. What is PRP used for? Tendon, ligaments, and joint injuries. It also has been used for post-surgical healing and hair loss. PAMPs and MAMPs. PAMPs is pathogen-associated molecule patterns, which is essential for organisms to survive. MAMPs is microbe-associated molecule patterns. They are molecules of pathogens that can trigger immune responses in plants. Examples of PAMP includes lipopolysaccharides, peptogland, and flagellin. Example of MAMPs include glycoprotein, lipoprotein, and flagellin. What are their roles? They alert the immune system to when there is an unwanted pathogen that has entered. MAMPs are found on a bunch of different microbes to help us detect unwanted pathogens from entering the immune system.
Cytokines. So, what are these? Where do they originate from, and what are their purpose? Cytokines are proteins released from immune cells that act as chemical messengers to the immune system. The body releases cytokines when there is a threat. This alerts the immune cells to fight threats and repair injuries. They signal cell activation, differentiation, and proliferation. As cytokines are released, other cells have cytokine receptors. These cytokines must bind to the receptors to signal the receiving cell. Even when there is no threat, they do still send the signals to maintain the immune system function. Types of cytokines. Cytokines include different types of proteins to ensure the correct functioning of the immune system. Chemokines send immune cells to fight infections, and interferons signal cells to defend against viruses invading the body. Cytokine signaling is when they send signals near the originating cell to travel far to relay messages. Autocrine signals signaling cytokines bind receptors to the exact cell that release it. Paracrine signaling cytokines bind receptors to nearby cells, and then endocrine signaling binds receptors far from their originating cells. Pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory cytokines. Pro-inflammatory cytokines trigger inflammation. They send signals that alert the body's immune response to fight off attacking cells. And the anti-inflammatory cytokines stop inflammation. These send signals to stop an immoderate immune response that can lead to tissue damage. Tissue damage. This is what triggers an inflammatory response in three phases. In phase one, local macrophages activate and mast cells release cytokines and vasculoactive substances. As mentioned, cytokines include pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory, as well as chemokines. Vasoactive substances cause initial vasoconstriction, followed by vasodilation and increased vascular permeability. In phase two is when our blood cells move the injury site and start phagocytosis. In phase three, tissue restoration occurs. DAMs. DAMs are released from damaged cells, activating the innate immune response via PRRs. While aiding defense, DAMs can promote pathological inflammation. These also play a huge role in pathogenic role in diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, Alzheimer's, and cancer. They act as biomarkers and therapeutic targets for these diseases.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the development of the inflammatory process. There's going to be a series of steps that occur when tissue is injured or affected. So first, it's going to be start with vascular changes. These will take place and the blood vessels get larger due to mediators like histamine, increasing blood flow and heat in the area. This also makes the vessels more permeable, allowing fluid and immune cells to move into the tissues. Um, and then we're going to talk about this on the next slide as well, but the C3 protein plays an important role here. It's formed when the C2 and C4 combine, and it splits into C3 and C5a, which will cause inflammation and develop the inflammatory process. These components recircuit white blood cells and trigger vasodilation, helping the immune response reach the damaged area. And there's also going to be some cellular changes along with the vascular changes. Some of the pro-inflammatory cytokines cause endothelial cells of the blood vessels to create adhesion molecules that will grab the phagocytes into the bloodstream. And then when the phagocytes leave the bloodstream, leave the blood vessel, and they'll move into the surrounding tissues. This is called diapedius, and then the neutrophils will arrive first, and then the monocytes and the lymphocytes. Perfect. And then the complement system is going to talk about all of these C proteins. And there's nine major proteins labeled C1 through C9. It's going to be activated through different pathways, classical, lectin, or alternative. And this leads to the formation of C convertase, which splits C3 into C3A and C3B. So C3A will activate neutrophils and contribute to inflammation. C5A causes vasodilation and recruits more white blood cells. And C3B will bind to foreign cells, marking them for destruction by phagocytes. And then together, these proteins amplify inflammation and make sure immune cells get to where they're needed most. And this picture will just help explain which C protein, which one does it do, and what pathway does it go into. All right, and then this is just going to be the development of inflammation continued. Once inflammation is triggered, immune cells start to move into the infected and injured tissue. The first responders are going to be our neutrophils, and they'll arrive super quick and engulf bacteria and debris. And then as the infection starts to resolve, macrophages will arrive next. They'll help clean up all the dead cells, and then the tissue will begin to heal. And these pictures just slowly reveal that process when the neutrophils get there and what they're doing to the bacteria. And then when the macrophages come, they'll clean up the area and allow for the blood clot and the tissue to heal. And this process of immune cell movement and cleanup helps control infection and restore anything back to its normal function. And then lastly, these are just some the cardinal signs of inflammation. Rumor, which is redness, this will just is caused by the increased blood flow in the area. The calor is caused from the warm blood flowing through the dilated vessels. Tumor is caused by the fluid acclimation, otherwise mostly known as edema. And then pain is caused by the pressure on the nerves and chemical mediators. And this could eventually lead to the loss of function, which would result in swelling, pain, and other inflammatory factors.
So, what exactly is inflammation? Inflammation is a defense mechanism of the body. The immune system recognizes harmful stimuli and tries to remove it. This could be in the form of a virus, pathogen, or irritant that the body is trying to remove. As discussed, cytokines are small proteins produced by the immune cells that act as chemical messengers. They direct immune cells by telling them what to do, where to go, and when to stop. In balanced amounts, cytokine signaling protects the body by stimulating inflammatory cells during injury or foreign invasion by a virus, pathogen, or irritant. When cytokine amounts are dysregulated, they contribute to tissue damage and possible disease. Inflammation can occur when there is no foreign invasion or injury, which can harm parts of your body that are functioning normally. Inflammation can be acute or chronic in the body. First, I'm going to talk about acute inflammation. This is caused when there is sudden tissue damage, microbial invasion, or poisonous compounds entering the body. This type of inflammation is rapid and typically lasts minutes to a few days, and it can become severe in a short period of time. This type of response from the body is non-specific, meaning it occurs for many different reasons. Acute inflammation can be triggered by external factors like microbes and pathogen-associated molecular patterns found in microorganisms. Non-microbial inducers like allergens, toxins, irritants, and large foreign particles that cannot be digested by immune cells. An example of a microbe entering the body exogenously is strep throat. This is a bacterial infection that can cause throat inflammation. Acute inflammation can also be triggered by internal factors like dead, damaged, or malfunctioning tissues. This can be divided into infectious and non-infectious factors. Infectious factors can be viruses and bacteria, while non-infectious factors include physical or biological injuries. Physical injuries can be from trauma, burns, radiation, alcohol, and chemical irritants. Biological inducers are abnormal signals released by cells. As talked about, there are five cardinal signs of inflammation, which can occur when you sprain your ankle, have a cut, maybe your appendix is inflamed, you got a sunburn, had an allergic reaction. As discussed, there are five signs, which is heat, which causes redness, swelling due to capillary dilation, pain, and loss of function. Some specific acute inflammation can be found in cardiovascular diseases. One is atherosclerosis. This is the leading global cause of death that is driven by inflammation. Inflammatory mediators are involved in every stage of atherosclerosis, from plaque formation in blood vessels to rupturing of the plaque. Cardiac stress triggers inflammation, which increases cytokines. When this plaque ruptures, a blood clot will be produced. This causes the blood vessel to be blocked, which causes a myocardial infarction or a heart attack. This activates cytokines and other inflammatory mediators to resolve the inflammation and promote healing, which is how acute inflammation works in someone with declining cardiovascular health. Chronic inflammation refers to a long-term, persistent inflammatory response, which can last from several months to years, showing symptoms or not. Some causes of this could be the body not removing something that's causing acute inflammation, like Mycobacterium tuberculosis, fungi, protozoa, or other microorganisms. Chronic inflammation can also occur when there is prolonged exposure to low-level irritants, which could be in the form of silica dust, which could be from autoimmune problems or defects in your cytokines. In the pictures on the top, the image on the left displays a picture of atherosclerosis, which causes a chronic inflammatory response from the body, while the picture on the right shows rheumatoid arthritis affecting the joint cartilage, which yields a chronic inflammatory response. While atherosclerosis was talked about as being an acute inflammatory disease, this is only when the plaque ruptures. I will go into how it is a chronic inflammatory disease. Chronic inflammation can occur from genetics, smoking, sedentary lifestyle, and obesity, which can cause chronic inflammatory diseases. The first one I'll be talking about is diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is caused by obesity or a sedentary lifestyle, which leads to insulin resistance. Insulin lowers glucose levels in the blood, so without this, glucose builds up in the blood, which causes the body to secrete inflammatory cytokines, which worsens insulin resistance. The next one is cardiovascular diseases like atherosclerosis. Plaque in the blood vessels accumulates from high-fat diets, obesity, and smoking. The plaque may rupture, causing acute inflammation as discussed, but chronic inflammation plays a role in cardiovascular disease. Endothelial cells get damaged in the blood vessels over time, which releases inflammatory mediators, which worsens plaque buildup. Arthritis and joint diseases. Osteoarthritis is caused by repetitive stress on the joints, typically worsened by obesity. This damages the joint cartilage and causes it to break down. Rheumatoid arthritis is an autoimmune disease where the immune system attacks its own joint tissues. This causes inflammation and swelling. Chronic inflammation in the joints leads to tissue destruction and pain and is worsened by obesity and inactivity. Chronic inflammation is not a disease, but a mechanism. Chronic inflammation stemming from inflammatory diseases can cause organ dysfunction and progressive tissue damage if left untreated.
Now we're going to be talking about the damaging effects that inflammation can have on the body. For acute inflammation, there can be severe bleeding or physical trauma that can trigger a malfunctioning acute inflammatory response. The inflammation spreads throughout the entire body instead of staying in one particular area. Damaged or stressed tissue release chemicals like cytokines and chemokines, which cause more inflammation and injury. This creates a continuous cycle that can harm several types of organs in the body. If this response becomes too strong or poorly regulated, it can spread throughout the entire body and lead to systemic inflammation. This uncontrolled inflammation can poorly affect organs, such as the lungs, liver, and kidneys, which can result in multiple organ complications or even lead to death. For chronic inflammation often develops silently. It plays a major role in the development of many long-term diseases and poses a serious risk to overall health and lifespan. I know a few of these were mentioned previously of different diseases and illnesses that can be caused by chronic inflammation, but the first one is cardiovascular disease, which is chronic inflammation that promotes a plaque buildup in the arteries, increasing the risk of heart attack or stroke. Different cancer can be persistent inflammation that damages DNA and supports tumor growth in organs such as the liver, pancreas, and colon. Diabetes is inflammation in pancreatic tissue that disrupts insulin production. This can lead to complications like nerve and kidney damage. Lastly is chronic kidney disease, which is an ongoing inflammation that harms the kidney tissue, which will increase toxin buildup.
Cell death is a biological process in the body where cells in the body stop working and die. A damaged cell that does not perform cell death can damage a person and make them sick. The benefits of cell death is cell death helps control the spread of infection, maintain tissue health, and triggers and regulates the inflammatory response. There are two types of cell death, programmed and uncontrolled. In programmed, we have apoptosis and autophagy. And then in uncontrolled, we have necrosis. Cell death type 1 is apoptosis. This cell death is usually referred to as controlled cell suicide. Cells are intentionally dying to maintain order and get the body back to homeostasis. Apoptosis is regulated and programmed cell death to maintain tissue health. Cells go through this process when they are old and damaged, infected by a virus, or the cells are no longer needed. Cells receive a signal, enzymes start breaking down the cell, and the cell shrinks and forms bubble on its surfaces called blebs. The cell splits into apoptotic bodies, and macrophages come clean up the tiny pieces. The cells are able to break down completely, so nothing is leaking out, leaving no inflammation. Apoptosis is used to kill virus-infected cells. Normal cells that have bad DNA are killed by apoptosis. However, if not killed, then cancer can grow from these cells. In the opposite effect, apoptosis can be used to kill cancer. Too much apoptosis can kill off needed brain cells, resulting in Alzheimer's disease. Cell death type 2 is autophagy. This cell death is usually referred to as self-eating. These cells are cleaning up itself by breaking down and recycling their old and damaged parts. This process helps the body to survive stress. Cells go through this process to keep the cells healthy by removing waste. Autophagy fights bacteria and viruses by destroying them from inside the cell. The cell wraps up the damaged and old parts of the cells, the proteins, in a small bubble called an autophagosome. The autophagosome joins with the lysosome, which contains enzymes that break the cell down. The recycling process starts and only takes new parts that are useful. This process is clean, so you usually won't see inflammation unless it fails and necrosis takes over. The clinical importance is it fights infections, removes damaged parts of cells to stop cancer, diabetes, and heart problems. However, this is a recycling process, so if you have cancer, this process can recycle and give nutrients to cancer cells. Recycles cell parts and provides nutrients when the body is under stress. Necrosis. This is uncontrolled cell death. This happens after trauma to the body occurs. This can be from infections, ischemia, or toxins. This is a messy process that does cause inflammation. So the process of necrosis, the cell is harmed from trauma that has occurred. This damages the cell membrane and mitochondria in the cell. Because of mitochondrial damage, ATP production stops and the cell can no longer control what goes in and out of it. Cell and organelles swell and sodium rushes in. The enzymes and DNA, the DAMPs, start to leak out of the cell. This signals white blood cells. This is when inflammatory chemicals are released, called cytokines, which causes redness, swelling, and pain. Inflammation tries to clean up the leakage, but also damages nearby tissue. Clinical importance and effect of necrosis. Some of the bacteria that causes necrosis can lead to nasty toxins being released that destroys tissue. Clostridium perfringens causes gas gangrene, which is a form of necrosis that lead to black, dead tissue cells that will ultimately lead to an amputation of the infected area. The Christian worldview. So nurses who hold a Christian value should care for those who are suffering from infections and inflammation. Compassion is needed when working in the healthcare field. A nurse's compassion should reflect Christ's example that he showed of healing and compassion. A nurse being able to understand cell death can help a patient who is suffering find the physical healing that they need. And a Bible verse that resonates with this is, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Psalms 147:3. And then we have our references. We have 2 reference pages. And then we all just want to thank you for watching our presentation on inflammation.